Sir, talking about elections, we can't, not discuss the postponement of the barangay and SK elections. As of this taping, the Supreme Court has yet to come out with its ruling. But what are your concerns? Was it right to challenge it in the Supreme Court? And I mean, what are you hoping for the Supreme Court to do?
I think it's right to challenge it at the court.
Okay.
The petition from requiring that the COMELEC set the barangay elections earlier. Our own research, for example, indicates that it's under the Constitution that Congress has the right to set the term limits of the barangay officials. Okay, but nothing in the Constitution says that they can set the date of the elections. So, and there have been several postponements.
Yeah, so 5 or 6 times, I believe, several times, right?
Several times. And that's one of the questions at the court when we listen to the oral arguments. Why the question of one of the justices why it was raised only
why
now.
Challenge now? Yeah,
why challenge now? So when should we challenge it? It's an opportune time as well. Okay, so that we end this cycle of keeping on postponing the barangay elections. The effect there is. The barangay officials, the current barangay officials have been serving for a long time, and I think the citizens have the right to choose their own leaders. Good if the barangay officials are performing, but what about those that are not performing, right? So I think the citizens have the right to choose new leaders. Yeah. It also goes along with Sangguniang Kabataan elections. So the incumbents are now over age, I guess, to continue as SK. And because of that as well, there's a number, I think it numbers to at least 10,000, for example, barangays without SK. So because the incumbents have graduated, so to speak, from their position. So there are vacant seats in the SK now in so many barangays. So that's the issue there.
Yeah.
Term limits, performance, okay, as well as qualifications.
Yeah, but what have you heard? I mean, why is the Supreme Court taking so long? Because effectively now it's postponed, right?
Right.
But because it is hanging, the decision is hanging, we don't know when the election will be. Although I think the intent of the lawmakers was to postpone it, I think, to October or November of this year?
October of 2023. Right. I cannot second guess.
Right, that's hard to, of course, yeah.
So we don't know what the considerations are. Okay, but we're of course hoping that the court will act soon on the petition. One of the dates we're looking at is, of course, October 2023. That's because that's in the law. The law postponing the barangay elections.
I see. Okay.
But of course, it would. The other date that is being considered is May 2023. Okay, because the petition by Attorney Macalintal asks the court to get COMELEC to schedule it sooner rather than later.
And since they're taking their time, I guess, to get the decision right? What would be your best case scenario from NAMFREL's viewpoint? What would you like to hear? Would you like for the Supreme Court to categorically say these are the dates, right, and these are the rules for rescheduling or postponing elections? What would be the ideal message that NAMFREL would like to hear from the Supreme Court?
Well, if we base it on the provisions of the Constitution,
beyond saying no, you cannot, you cannot postpone, right? But to prevent similar things from happening in the future, what would clarify all the ambiguity, I think, about elections?
From NAMFREL's point of view, right, we have to have the elections, we have to ensure regularity of the elections, predictability of the elections. That's one. So setting it, I think the court, and I'm not a constitutionalist, much less I'm not a lawyer, right, an elections lawyer. But people have the right to regular, predictable elections, and that's one of our commitments under the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, which was ratified by the Philippines back in 1986, I think. Right? So that's part of the conditions there. Right? So what we'd like to see is a more permanent schedule of the barangay elections, similar to the national and local elections.
Well, how serious is the problem? I mean, I know in one editorial, for instance, we were saying that there's an issue of legitimacy of the people in the office now, because they have been extended for many years. But does that legitimacy issue create other problems on the ground as to law and order, or people not recognizing the barangay officials? The SK officials are probably not eligible anymore to be holding the position. Is that a concern? Is that an overblown issue?
No, well, we've not seen anything untoward challenging the incumbent officials, except that the people, of course, expect them to perform.
Okay.
Right? The issue of legitimacy, again, is an issue that somebody else maybe can raise. No?
Okay.
The experts, the election experts can raise. But certainly, I think, even on the ground, we've not seen anything.
So it's more important to you just to follow the law. The law says have elections, and therefore we should. That's your bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Regular, predictable elections.
Right. Now, circling back to some of NAMFREL's concerns, right, and election reforms. One of the issues that we've heard about is the election list. And you know more than that I do. But what is the issue there of not being able to clean up the list of voters and purge it from voters who've died or who've maybe migrated to another country or whatnot? Well, what's the issue there?
Well, every election, for example, we hear of instances where the name of a dead voter has been used and somebody exercised the right to vote under that name. So that's one issue.
And of course, because every election there are more people, there are bigger and bigger lists of dead people on the voters list. Is that right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge because the commission cannot just simply remove a name from the roster of voters, right? They have to have basis, right? So unless somebody brings it up to court, for example, then somebody challenges it, then that's the only time. And if the court so decides that they can remove a name from the list. But I know that there's been a lot of coordination, for example, with the local civil registrars, as well as the Philippine Statistics Authority, to look into this matter of deceased voters, right? And that's one of the reforms that I think the commission is looking into, right? To get those voters lists cleansed. The other one, the other issue is, of course, padded voters lists, because, for example, in between elections, there are people who
Is this the dagdag bawas?
Not the dagdag bawas, but people moving in and out of particular jurisdictions.
All right.
So the barangay officials, for example, it's possible.
Yeah.
So the barangay officials would encourage this, almost transient residents to register. Okay. But as far as I know, the commission also has a capability naman to cleanse the voters list by using our biometrics. They collect our biometrics information, in particular our fingerprints, to match the voters list so that they can cleanse it with the read of duplicates. So there's a process there. It's very technical because it's processing fingerprint.
Yeah, but I know we were talking about a voter's ID a long time ago, and I don't know what happened to that now. There's, of course, national ID. I don't know. Maybe you can update us. Is the national ID going to be the new
As far as I know, the commission had stopped issuing COMELEC IDs. Okay. And there's, I think, a conscious decision to adopt the Philippine National ID as a form of identity, document. So there are talks again on whether they can share information, no, between the Commission and the Philippine Statistics Authority. They share and exchange information about or the data of the citizens, right? Or whether the COMELEC can use, for example, the biometrics information collected by the PSA,
Right.
and vice versa,
Right.
you know, to cleanse the voters list.
As a tech guy, this must be very frustrating for you because, you know, there's simple solutions to this. Lito will be right back. We just have to take another quick break. This is Business and Politics. We're talking to Mr. Averio of NAMFREL.